Hello, I'm Kirsten Aiken. Welcome to the Business Summer Series and this special episode on the stories that rocked corporate Australia in 2023. Coming up on the program, from bank call centres to trains and hospitals, the Optus outage that knocked out services throughout the economy.
I fully appreciate how frustrating it was for all our customers.
It's estimated that an outage like this, could cost to the economy $400 million just one day.
And Qantas hits turbulence, the CEO goes early, and the airline faces more legal action.
Client service isn't great, prices are high.
Typical big companies, only they're thinking about the shareholders a lot of times.
Also on the program, are mining companies doing enough to protect and welcome more women into the industry?
We have all had conversations that you're not necessarily comfortable with.
2023 was the year when Australians facing rising cost of living pressures also counted the cost of a series of corporate failures and scandals. Mounting public and political anger prompted a number of chief executives to leave their posts prematurely. The embattled boss of Optus fell on her sword in November. Kelly Bayer-Rosmarin resigned after the telco was hacked in 2022 and a huge outage a year later that cut off 10 million customers and hundreds of thousands of businesses. Daniel Ziffer reports.
The Optus CEO was under pressure after a connection fault.
I fully appreciate how frustrating it was for all our customers.
Kelly Bayer-Rosmarin has resigned as Optus CEO.
12 days after the telco system melted down for hours.
Now Kelly Bayer-Rosmarin is gone, in a statement saying her resignation was in the best interests of Optus. A massive network blackout, the trigger for a new leader of our second largest telecommunications company. The outage on November 8th left around 10 million customers without mobile phone or internet access, or in some cases, both. Around 400,000 businesses also struggled to operate. Many paid a price.
How can you be an essential service and fail so hugely?
As a relief teacher, Sean Kelly relies on a call from the Education Department to let him know which school to work at. The Optus outage meant he lost an entire day of wages.
It makes me very angry and also cost me $460.
For others, much more.
It's estimated that an outage like this could cost to the economy $400 million just one day.
Business groups want Optus to pay up for the damage done.
Many businesses that were using Optus lost pretty much a full day's trade. If you're a small business, that can be $2,000 or $3,000, which has gone down the drain.
And don't forget the hack. In 2022, the private details of almost 10 million current and former Optus customers were stolen, exposing many to the risk of identity theft and requiring huge numbers of new passports and driver's licences to be issued.
Even with the Optus boss dialing out, a problem remains. In our increasingly digital economy, everything from ambulances to cash registers are connected through privately run networks.
The government will have to step in. The government will have to have more oversight in relation to the fact that it affects the economy, it affects the public, it affects our society.
Optus Chief Financial Officer Michael Ventnor has been installed as interim CEO, as the Singaporean company seeks a new boss and a fresh start.
I think we've got to really learn from this experience. We have to be prepared that something like this can happen again.
A call we need to answer.
The Optus debacle took a bit of the heat off Qantas after the airline experienced months of turbulence. In September, the CEO, Alan Joyce, stepped down 2 months earlier than originally planned. His departure came less than a week after the competition regulator launched legal action against Qantas for allegedly selling tickets to flights that had already been cancelled. Nassim Kadem reports.
After a week of heavy turbulence, Alan Joyce has been pushed out the door, retiring 2 months earlier than planned. His successor, Vanessa Hudson, who's worked for the company for 29 years, had this message for Qantas's 25,000 staff.
We know that post-COVID, we haven't always delivered to what our customers expect. But we are listening and we hear what they are saying.
Liz Aitken is one of Qantas's many unhappy customers.
Please visit qantas.com. We thank you for your patience.
She's been on hold for years, waiting for a refund for a flight her now deceased mother had booked with Qantas in March 2020.
Pretty poor, to be honest. Mum was always a great supporter of Qantas. She never really flew Virgin.
Liz now refuses to fly Qantas.
They basically just ignored her for the whole process and then proceeded to ignore me as well. It just leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Many others are disappointed.
It's pretty tough at the moment, it's frustrating. Client service isn't great. Prices are high.
Typical big companies, only they're thinking about the shareholders a lot of times.
Investors also want the airline to lift its game. They're calling on the company to withhold millions of dollars of bonuses for its executives, and some want the chairman sacked.
I would argue that Joyce out, Chairman Goyder out.
Qantas has a big repair task ahead. It could face a multi-million-dollar penalty after the consumer watchdog, the ACCC, takes the company to court, alleging it sold more than 8,000 flights that were already cancelled. There's also political heat building over Qantas's special relationship with the government that led to it blocking rival airline Qatar Airways from accessing routes that could have driven prices down.
I'm not here to comment on decisions of the federal government when it comes to who flies in and out of our country. But I will make this point. We've always wanted more flights, not less, because more flights mean lower prices.
Liz Aitken is counting on a better experience. After ABC News contacted Qantas, it said it would refund her the full amount owed.
They should be paying attention to the people that make the money, which is their customers.
It's a message that Qantas is just beginning to heed.
For weeks, Qantas chairman Richard Goyder resisted calls to step down before announcing he would retire ahead of the airline's annual general meeting in 2024. That wasn't enough for shareholders at the November AGM, who delivered a stinging first strike to the board, while Goyder faced further calls to resign immediately. Here's Nasim Kadem again.
Qantas investors are unhappy. Their message at the airline's annual general meeting was unanimous. 83% voted against the company's report on executive pay.
Pull their socks up. Somebody was saying in there, the rot started at the top.
The chairman should resign now.
The CEO and chairman were in damage control, apologising for the past and promising a better future.
There are many things, big and small, that we didn't get right.
This is obviously a very clear message from shareholders.
But the chairman shut down uncomfortable questions about whether the former CEO, Alan Joyce, cashed out his pay too soon.
You're implying an illegal act, and there was nothing illegal.
An unethical act,
well,
sir.
You're
Okay.
implying either or, and I'm not going to let that stand in this room. Thank you.
There's a strong feeling within the community that Qantas has lost its social licence.
Shareholders are disappointed and frustrated with Qantas board and management team, and they're sending a signal, and that signal is things need to change.
The discontent from shareholders comes as the consumer watchdog takes Qantas to court, alleging it misled customers by selling thousands of flights that were already cancelled. The airline says it can't guarantee flights, and it did its best to get customers where they wanted to be on time. But the ACCC has told the ABC it will continue to fight the case in court and seek a record penalty.
Are your toast?
Customers like Nick Rutherford are also unhappy. He says he was left $6,000 out of pocket after Qantas wouldn't let his baby board a flight and then refused to book them on another.
Just so far off the mark of what would be expected of Australia's national carrier.
Qantas says it's now looking into the case.
It wasn't just the failures from Optus and Qantas which prompted Australians to see red in 2023. PwC soon became public enemy number one. The consulting giant had been hired by the federal government to help clamp down on multinational tax dodging. But it was revealed the firm misused information from confidential Treasury briefings to help multinationals avoid tax. Here's David Chow with his explainer from May on how the scandal unfolded.
The accounting giant PwC is facing an existential crisis. Revelations that its senior partners misused confidential government information to help multinational tech companies avoid tax has rocked the firm to its foundations. The firm has launched an independent investigation headed by Ziggy Switkowski. Meanwhile, PwC Australia's chief executive Tom Seymour has quit. A senior partner has been banned from working in the industry, and the firm's most senior global partners have flown in a desperate attempt at damage control. This saga began in 2014 when PwC partner Peter Collins was advising Treasury on ways to tax the big global tech companies fairly, which was a key strategy of Joe Hockey, who was Treasurer at the time. According to a treasure trove of emails released by the Senate a fortnight ago, Collins leaked the information to as many as 53 partners, who then approached 14 global companies with a plan on how to dodge the new rules. Here's a snippet from the 138 pages of emails. Awesome for our multinational anti-avoidance law defence work. Puts us in a great place. The names of all the recipients except Peter Collins have been redacted. But there are calls for all of them to be named and for further action to be taken.
A whatever it takes focus on making money was behind PwC's tax leak scandal and its fall from grace, according to the firm's review by former Telstra boss Ziggy Switkowski. He singled out an aggressive growth agenda and lack of independence. The accounting giant accepted all 23 recommendations on top of the sell-off of its government business in an attempt to stem the scandal's fallout. Here's David Chow once more.
What happened is unacceptable.
PwC has a shadow side, a boys' club where revenue was king and its CEO had too much power.
We deeply regret the failures of PwC Australia's governance and leadership over the last few years.
Using some inside information, some intel they were gleaning from the government.
PwC's latest attempt at damage control, a scathing report by former Telstra boss Ziggy Switkowski into the firm's culture, governance and accountability.
The Switkowski report, given the heavy nature of its criticisms, has been released by the firm to be transparent.
The report was commissioned after explosive revelations that one of its partners leaked confidential information from government briefings, which PwC then used to help its clients dodge multinational tax avoidance laws.
We need systemic change in these big four corporations, and we need real consequences for people who, in their greed, take the Australian population for a ride. That has to stop.
PwC has committed to accepting all 23 recommendations of the Switkowski report, including giving the board the explicit power to sack the CEO.
This is the firm that prides itself on being the consultant to go to for those very things. So they give out advice that they don't take themselves.
It will also adopt ASX corporate governance principles, appoint at least 3 independent board members, including a non-executive chair to its board, and it will publish audited accounts by 2025, a first for one of the big 4 firms. Another review, commissioned by the firm, has cleared overseas PwC personnel of using confidential information from PwC Australia for commercial gain. But 6 staff members will be disciplined.
We need more transparency in these multi-billion-dollar organisations, and the Australian taxpayer and citizen are not going to settle for less.
The battle to re-earn trust has some way to go.
The PwC revelations saw politicians from both sides of the aisle, as well as the crossbenchers, calling for a crackdown on big consultants. The Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, declared PwC's breach of trust had been both shocking and appalling. Daniel Ziffer takes a look at new penalties the government is proposing for companies and advisors caught doing the wrong thing.
A scandal that's torched PwC and bruised its rivals, embarrassing a government that's spending billions of dollars a year with consulting firms.
Incredibly unprofessional practices that have been replete across this sector.
How does a government come back from a scandal that makes it look as if it's absolutely and utterly weak?
By getting out a bigger stick.
The federal government has launched a crackdown on tax advisor misconduct.
Penalties for people and firms that promote tax avoidance schemes will increase 100-fold, from $7.8 million to $780 million. The government is also proposing extending the time the tax office has to bring cases to 6 years. And tax secrecy barriers that stop the tax office talking to other regulators will be removed.
As a deterrence measure, it's the nuclear option. It's there to scare people and to make sure people in firms know that there's a cost to stuffing around.
And coming, a broad review of how the firms are governed.
The secret is to have proper tendering processes, to have very clear lines of authority, to make sure that all issues are resolved before you contract and you don't automatically extend or renew, that in fact you have to do that every time.
The scandal began when former PwC senior partner, Peter John Collins, took information from confidential Treasury briefings about plans to tax multinational corporations. PwC used that information to help their global clients get around the new laws, making millions in fees. A key rule of business: don't make your biggest client angry. The federal government is now rewriting the rules of how the powerful firms are scrutinised and governed. In the past, the industry has successfully pushed back on legislation. Let the consultation begin.
It seems a long time ago now, but the collapse of 3 small to mid-size US banks within 1 week in March gave rise to fears for the stability of global banking. There were concerns access to credit would tighten, more banks might fail, and financial contagion could increase the risk of a recession. But the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank was difficult for some Australian startups, wondering if they'd get off the ground or be forced to merge. This report from Nasim Kadem.
Yeah, this is a very crazy situation. Just don't even really know what to say about this. I'm kind of in shock.
When startup founder Lauren Humphrey first got word that Silicon Valley Bank was in dire trouble, she panicked.
The advice was going from, hey, get maybe some money out, to like, get it all out. Don't be a company that loses its money. Yeah, I'm still not seeing anything.
She runs a platform called The Mintable, which provides training tools for managers.
You know, I think that's all we can do, is just assume the best.
The startup had recently raised $6.8 million and roughly 80% was in a Silicon Valley bank account.
I think over the course of an hour, our panic started to rise about kind of the level of seriousness and the probability that the bank was actually going to collapse.
Across the Pacific Ocean, founders of another startup were also facing uncertainty. Rory Garton-Smith and Harry Dixon operate online shopping app Checkmate from Los Angeles. The Perth duo said they'd raised over $7 million, all sitting in an SVB account.
It's scary when you realise how fragile things are.
He says the Twitter frenzy caused them to pull their money out.
That really, a bunch of group chats texting each other can cripple one of the USA's top 20 largest financial institutions overnight. It's pretty alarming.
It just shows how these banks, just how mismanaged they were. And ultimately, there's usually not just one cockroach, there's more than one. It's going to cause some darker days ahead on the startup, on the VC side. And I believe you're going to see ultimately accelerated M&A.
Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. US regulators stepped in to protect deposits. So for now, both these Aussie companies feel their money is safe. But Andrea Gardiner, who's an early-stage investor in Australian startups, says the impact on the tech sector will be long-lasting.
Investors will want to see the companies with more capital to create more runway to sort of mitigate the risk of running out of capital and dying, in which case everybody loses, including the investors.
What will happen to the US banking system? It was quite odd in the end, but no, all good.
The partner of another venture capital firm said the 72 hours leading to SVB's collapse were like being in an emergency room.
Saturday morning, I ended up working all through. We left late because it was just chaos. So the first triage was for the companies that can't meet payroll, how can we help them? Loading up messages one by one, calling people.
Blackbird's investment portfolio includes 107 companies in the US, UK and Australia. About 1/3 have SVB accounts, some with millions of dollars. Nick Crocker says startups are now having to go to big investment banks that have stepped in to take SVB's place.
There's no change to their ability to go and secure funding. There is a change in their ability to have a great relationship with their bank, or at least a great experience with their bank, who might not be as used to banking startups.
The collapse of SVB and other US banks has sent the industry into a crisis. We've also seen Credit Suisse rescued by rival UBS in a government-backed deal. While there's a chance Australia could go into a recession if the US does, economists say this isn't like the global financial crisis.
Why I'm not panicked, I don't see this as the GFC 2.0, is I don't see a systemic solvency problem. I hope I keep being right about that.
Ms Humphrey doesn't want to imagine economic Armageddon, but is preparing for the impact it could have on her business.
The bigger the recession, the bigger the downturn, the more affected we all are. And so there's sort of a domino effect.
A domino effect that could take time to play out.
A cyber hack in November forced Australia's largest ports operator to shut its operations, resulting in significant delays of goods coming in and out of the country. Cybersecurity analysts told the ABC the company had failed to fix a critical IT vulnerability known as Citrix Bleed, despite an update being available for a month beforehand. Some employees' personal data was stolen in the incident. Executive Vice President Nikolai Nuss told me the company could have done more to protect its systems. Had DP World left itself exposed by failing to update its systems promptly?
If you ask me if I could go back in time in a month and say, would you have done some things differently, I probably would have.
A survey of business executives has shown that a majority are uncertain how to prepare for or react to incidents such as this one. What is your message to them after your experience?
Yeah, the message is that there is actually a lot of great knowledge out there. There's a lot of entities and companies that can help you protect you. There is actually also a government that stands ready to assist and to share knowledge. So there is frankly a big community out there that you can tap into. And once you're in it, you actually find out that you're not alone with this, that there's a lot of people out there that's looking to help you, but there's also people that's there to help you before it happens.
And finally, women are joining Australia's mining industry in growing numbers, but it is still very much a man's world. Of 200,000 mining jobs, 4 in 5 are filled by men. An industry-wide investigation into sexism and harassment culminated in the Enough is Enough report to the WA Parliament, which recommended how to make the workplace safer and more welcoming. While visiting the Diggers and Dealers Conference in Kalgoorlie, Rachel Papazzoni spoke to a number of women about their experiences in the sector.
My name is Nicole Duncan and I'm the Managing Director of Nickel Search Limited. I think that the mining industry is leading the way in many respects, and it's being held up as either a beacon or a tale of woe. But either way, it's at the forefront. I think that it is changing.
Hi, I'm Camilla Golding and I'm a geologist at Lefroy Exploration. I have encountered challenges based on my gender, specifically a sexual harassment issue. This was a long time ago and I was really young and I didn't do anything about it at the time. But if it happened to me today, I wouldn't stand for it. I think not enough women speak up about incidents that have happened to them, and I think it's more prevalent than what's even come out in the latest parliamentary inquiry.
Hi, my name's Claire Edwards. I'm a resource geologist for a junior explorer called Medaille Metals. I've never been attacked or harassed in any significant way. However, in discussion with my peers, what I have found is the reality is We have all had discussions or been in the field or been underground and had conversations that you're not necessarily comfortable with.
Hello, I'm Rowena Smith. I'm the Managing Director for Australian Strategic Materials. I certainly think that that was something I was very aware of in the first 15 years of my career. So it's just been so disappointing when you hear that it is actually still the lived experience for so many women through the industry.
Hi, I'm Narelle Marriott, General Manager of Process Development for Hastings Technology Metals. The Enough is Enough report has highlighted some of the issues and made it really open in terms of what has been happening. It's brought everything out into the light, and we need to learn from it and make the mining industry, as well as across all of society, a more fair and equal and welcoming place for everyone.
The attention it's garnered, I think, is great, because I think if it starts some positive conversations, I think that's awesome, because I think for a long time we have actually just turned a blind eye and accepted it.
This is not acceptable to us. This is not how we as an industry want to show up. This is not how we as teams want to show up, and that we lead that change from the top.
We often see these issues around something like an offender register, which is something that society is demanding, but the legal system is lagging behind in terms of accommodating. So I put it more towards the fact that we need reform of our legal system to reflect where society is going with that.
Meaningful change? No, I think we're completely tongue-tied, as both genders are tongue-tied, and we actually don't know how to respond.
I do think there's been an improvement. I think more people are coming out, they're being more open, but I don't think it's yet quite a safe space. Otherwise we would see more women attracted to, and we'd see more women who are retained within the industry, and the numbers suggest otherwise.
Hello, my name's Amanda Lacaze and I'm the CEO and MD of Lynas Rare Earths Limited. I am disappointed to be at the stage in my life that I'm at and still see that we have violence towards women so prevalent in our society, in homes and in the workplace. I think that we have a greater awareness, and that does potentially create fertile ground for change, but we're not seeing the outcomes yet.
And that's all from this episode of the Business Summer Series. For more business stories, head to our website or catch up anytime on iView. The Business will return on air weeknights from January 29th. I'm Kirsten Aiken. Thanks for watching.